So tell me where Ruth worked.
She worked at Cook's
When?
from the time that
Cook's
she got her divorce.
truck stop, the diner.
Yeah.
At the truck stop.
You were, when I was pregnant with you, in 1969,
Mm-hmm.
1970, she started working there because she got a divorce.
Until about 1981.
Yep.
Because that was when she came to Omaha.
Mm-hmm. 7 years. I thought it was longer than that, but it wasn't, was it?
And what did she say she did there?
She said she was the manager. And every time I ever went there, she was sitting dressed up in a suit between Mr. Cook and the sons.
I know
Daryl
she used to, when we would come visit, she would get me a big plate of waffles and fill up every hole with butter and
and
syrup.
fill it up with syrup.
Yeah, fill the plate with syrup.
You and Dee Dee Joe.
Did she ever wait tables there first? Or did she start out a manager?
She didn't wait tables very long. She did wait tables, but just a really short time. Till
And what doesn't make sense about that is Ruth was illiterate.
Yeah.
She didn't have the skills to
She
be.
could barely fill out those tickets. And Grace told her to do that and Mel Zink, when Mel Zink came to Mina, she taught her how to do that so that they could go work at the diner at the bus station so they could get enough money to come home.
Right.
Because she had written to her dad to send her her money, and he sent her Melzine. They gotta figure it out. And
So she waited tables then when she was young, long enough to get a bus ticket home from
it's the
Arkansas.
only time she'd ever worked.
And then she waited tables for how long? Like a couple of years, I guess. When she was going back and forth between the two restaurants, she kept getting mad at Bob's and.
Yeah, because she had to work two years. She had to wait 2 years till I was 5 years old.
And then she basically never waited tables or worked after that.
The only time, the time the gang rape happened, she worked 1 week at this little nightclub behind the Boxy. It belonged to the guy that owned Boxy, and he was a sasser.
Why did she do that?
Because she didn't want to be involved in that. She didn't want to get thrown in jail over them gang
She was
raping.
married to Leonard then, though, right?
Yeah. He wasn't there either till the very end, and then
Yeah.
he came and participated in that.
Yeah.
But they set that up, and she went running and got a job for 1 week, and that's the only time she ever worked.
So
Yeah,
and then suddenly Cook's Truck Stop hired her to manage the cafe.
Well, she went to work there for Dee and Tommy were still in high school when she got her divorce, and she went to work there for about just a short time.
Yeah.
And they escalated her into this position.
And she had no other work experience.
No,
No.
she never worked.
And so clearly it makes sense she would have been hired as the manager. Yeah.
Those girls though said that to me, and they got shut up.
Okay, so those girls. So when you were just telling me this earlier. So when you were after you got a divorce, you had a job at Poor Boy's Steakhouse as a waitress at night, and so some women you worked with told you.
They were in a huddle and they went on by. They said, "Hey, Bonnie, were you ever? Did Melzine and Ruth ever mistreat you like us?" And I said, "Like what? What do you mean?" And she said, "Like we got shoved into a room for sex when we were working out there." And I said, "Absolutely not."
What was your reaction to that?
I went home, went and asked Ruth about it. What I always did. Always went.
Were you mad though? I mean, did you think they were
I was-
slandering your
no,
mother? Or?
I just didn't. They were nice. I didn't know, and I went and asked her, and she went and told Melzine what they said. And Melzine came over there the next morning and said that did not happen. I never did anything like that. She was denying it. But I'll tell you another thing that happened when the first time that Rusty and I came home after I moved to Temple or to Belton.
So this was right after you guys got married.
Well, it was like 6 months. I
Right,
moved
yeah.
down there for 6 months. But anyway, we went to Ruth's house, and Jeanette was there. Second time I'd ever seen her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was sitting with the phone in her lap, like she always did. Do you remember her doing that?
I wasn't
She
around
always
her
sat
much.
with the phone in her lap. But anyway, Ruth, Arnold, Leonard, and Ruth were in the kitchen. And
Was she married to Arnold at that
Mhm.
time?
Yeah, they barely got married. But anyway, when we left and got back to Belton, Ruth called me and said, "I hope you guys weren't upset about that woman being here." And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she said, "Well, I just thought that might upset you." Like I knew what they were doing. I didn't. Of course, she didn't know that I had just blocked everything out, I guess. I don't know. But because she warned me to never speak about it, so she probably just thought I didn't speak about it.
Yeah.
She said, "I didn't know what Rusty would think about that." And I said something to Rusty, and he said, "My God, I'm so glad to see that. I thought this was forever going to be a church thing with
Yeah.
you." And which told me, and then the other things that I heard along the way, that he was in Bordellos all the time when he was a kid.
Yeah.
I know he was Jonathan, and things that Mama said. But she also told me when I moved back there after the divorce to never talk to Milsane, to never ever
Oh, I remember
let her
that.
find
Yeah,
out
we
that-
weren't allowed to even look.
speak to her or
No.
anything. And she and Al would come out and sit in my section. And I would go say, "What can I do for you guys?" And I'd write it up, and I'd go turn it in, and I would fill their tea and not talk to them, not say another word to them. Because she said,
I know if we ever saw her in public, we always went the other way.
We weren't
Just-
allowed to have
mhm.
anything to do with her. And she came to the house one time after we fixed the couch, and it was at Christmas when the tree was pink.
On
and-
Lee Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one kids were in there and everything. And she came in. She came to the door, and I opened it, and I didn't ask her in, because. But I asked Tommy.
Because
I said,
Ruth said you weren't allowed to speak to her.
wasn't allowed
Yeah.
to speak to her, so I
Mhm.
couldn't ask her in. And she just kind of looked around at everything. And she said, "Well, I guess I'll just go." And she left. But I asked Tommy after Ruth gave me that big speech about I was not allowed to talk to her. I said, "Tommy, what do you do about all these fights that are going on among this family?" He said, "Are you mad at anybody?" And I said, "No." He said, "I'm not either." He said, "If I want to talk to him, I talk to him."
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't dare do that. I mean, I was terrified of her even then. But Melcy and Al came out all the time. They came out about once a week and sat in my section, gave me a $5 tip every time.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, that was just a nervous wreck the whole time I was there. They were the only ones that ever came in, except once Tommy and Ruth came in, but they didn't sit in my section. And the family, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody else ever came in that I knew except Jerry. But I mean, I knew these people from living in Clovis. and
I
they-
waited tables there all the time, but I wouldn't have known anybody if they came in anyway. I mean, I wouldn't have known anybody in that
I
family.
didn't know Kip when I went back to Chalks and stayed there for a while. I rented him one night with Freddie, and she told me, she said, "Do you know him?" And I said, "Who is he?" And she said, "He's Kip." I said, "No, I didn't." And I talked to him. 2 days later, he came in the office because he found out he could get a 10% discount because he was my cousin. And he came and said, "Hi, cuz, how are you?" And I said, "Who in the heck are you?" Because he was working that day, so he was all dressed up because he's an instructor. And when I saw him the first time, he had his ball cap and all that on. I didn't even recognize him.
Hmm.
There's so many of them, and they're so scattered. And I've got a picture, and I don't know how that came up, but about a month ago, a picture came up in my pictures. And I don't know how it got there, where it came from, but I know it's one of them.
Of who?
I don't know who it is, but I know it's a Bannister
In your phone?
in my phone.
Huh.
It's really strange. I didn't take it out because I thought, I wonder who that is, you know. It's very strange.
What was the,
I kind of figured that out about Ruth when, let's see, Rusty used to make cracks about her. And I did to him what I did to Daryl. I said, "You are crazy. That's not going on." And Daryl,
You were always really defensive about her.
oh,
If anybody said anything, you were crazy defensive about Ruth.
she was a nightmare. I mean, she was a nightmare beyond control. But Daryl told me that one night driving down the street, and I said, "Take me home." I said, "I don't. That's not true."
Hmm.
And he said, "Are you?" Which
He told you what?
he's told me that Ruth was a prostitute.
Yeah.
I said, "No." He said, "Your mother is a prostitute."
Hmm.
Did you know your mother is a prostitute? And I said, "She is most certainly not." And he said, "Yes, she is, Bonnie." And I said, "No, she is not." We got into a bicker about it. And he said, "Are you talking about Gracie Bell, your mother, or Ruth, your mother?"
And
I
this
said,
was Daryl Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, "Gracie Bell is not my mother. She is my aunt, and Ruth is not a prostitute."
Hmm.
And he kept arguing with me, and I said, "Just take me home." And so he did. But then
I know she slept with a loaded gun in the headboard of her bed.
yeah, no kidding. Freddie asked me why I didn't go sit with her at night. I said, "You crazy." I said, "She sleeps with a gun." And I said, "She threatened Angie and I with that when we
Mhm.
lived there, that she might just shoot us when we walked in the door." And I said, "We had a key. We walked in, I got off work at 9:30. We'd eat and go in there." And she said, "You think she could hit anything?" I said, "I know good and well she can hit." I said, "She taught all of her sons to shoot, and they're all perfect at that." She probably even taught Chalk that, truth be known. But
Did she ever try to teach you how to shoot?
no, are you kidding? They didn't teach me anything. It was offensive. She asked me that too, and I said, "No, I don't know." I said, "Arnold one time handed me a shotgun and told me to shoot it, and I did, and it knocked me down." I said, "He didn't even warn me that I couldn't do that. He thought it was hysterical because it knocked me down."
Was it Ruth that could drive down the highway and shoot rabbits?
No, that was Arnold.
Arnold while he was driving.
We were going somewhere. It was Karen and Arnold was driving, and Ruth was in the passenger seat. They were in a bench seat, so they were all three up there. And I was in the back seat, and he was driving like this and shooting under his arm and through the window, and you would see the rabbits.
Tumble.
He hit them. Moving. I mean, that's not easy to do.
No, I wouldn't
He was
think
a really
so.
good shot. And plus he had that eye issue, and we went to this Tri-State Fair at Amarillo,
Mm-hmm.
and he was trying to shoot those little wood things that go across,
Mhm.
that they move. Couldn't hit anything. He stood there. I bet he gave them $20 sitting trying to shoot those things. And Tommy was about 10 years old or 11, and he was just jumping for joy. "Give me that gun, I want to do it. Give me that gun, I want to do it." And he had eye surgery when he was in the second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was telling about it, he said, "Oh, they just popped out my eyeball, worked on the back of it, popped it back in, we came home."
Yeah.
And it was, but anyway, he'd had that surgery, and he handed him that gun finally, and he had hit every single one of them.
So Ruth taught him to shoot too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They all knew.
Well, she would have known that growing up the way they did.
Because Mom taught her how to shoot.
Yeah.
Because she was another one that could just hit anything with a gun.
She had 19 kids. She needed to.
That's what happened for you. Probably shot him.
Huh. Tell me what happened with the packages at your wedding shower?
Oh, I don't know, because we left and the table was all set up with the crystal, and it had all the.
Well, Ruth threw the invitations away.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
what
when you got
happened
the
on that-
packages, how were somebody's names
Gwen
wrong?
kept talking to the people at the barn, the women at the barn that were, and it wasn't the women I worked with. It was women that owned the businesses around there. There's some
Mhm.
businesses out there. Their husbands owned them. Anyway, she kept coming in and saying, "They want to give you a shower." And I said, "Gwen, I'm not going to have a shower. I don't need one." Because I'd been collecting things for 6 years. I had a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And she said, and she'd come back again, because they were just after anything that was loose. I mean, they were after the gifts. But anyway, finally, Ms. Ballou called me, and she had been my Sunday school teacher for years. And she said, "Bonnie, I'm giving you a shower." And it was...
Yeah, you told me that story the other day, but I'm talking about The names on the packages, who they were from.
They were from the Bannisters. Like Chalk asked me here not too many years ago. He said, I was so mad when I found out Freddie gave you a pitcher. And I said, Chalk, it was a crystal pitcher. I said, it was probably one of the most expensive things I got. He said, oh, that's a good thing. I said, yeah, that's a really good thing. But Freddie didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
She said, I didn't go to your shower. You know, that when we had that conversation,
Mhm.
I said, well, I got a gift from you. But that was, Ruth made those little cards up, I'm sure, and put them out in those different things. Because I
Mhm.
had a table full of crystal, I mean, loaded.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all the Bannisters
Mm-hmm.
and the people from church that I knew that she knew. If I sent them an invitation, I would get a gift, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they could go to Stanley's and just send me a gift.
Right.
And Ruth said that Stanley's delivered it all, and then they picked it all up the next day and brought it to her house.
Right.
They were instructed to do that, I'm sure. But she put it in her china closet. And when I came in,
But didn't you tell me? Okay, because you told me the other night that she was going to make out all the invitations and she
No,
threw them away.
Miss Ballou asked me for a list.
Yeah.
And I said, Miss Ballou, it's in my address book. And I said, if I have to write you out a list, I could just put it on the cards if you want me to. And she said, you want to do that? And I said, sure, I'll do that. So Sunday afternoon, I sat down and filled them all out.
Right.
And the next morning, I got up and picked up the box. There were 50 invitations, so it was a pretty good sized box. And started at the door, and she said, give me that box. I am going to be the one who takes care of the post office.
That was Ruth. Yeah.
Yeah. And she took it out of my hand and going out the door. I thought, I bet anything she trashes those.
Yeah.
And I thought I ought to go down the alley and just see it. I thought, sure as I do that, she'll catch me. And I was on my way to work, so I just went to work. And those invitations never got sent out because I had a few people that, and I'm sure.
So then the night of the shower, nobody showed up,
Mhm.
but you had a table full of gifts.
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't be uncommon even because, you know, it was a really icy night.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanley's would deliver it all, which they did.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were going to buy a crystal gift,
Yeah.
they would just deliver it all.
Right.
And they did. And they weren't wrapped, which I thought was unusual.
Hmm.
But she just had cards laying in the things. And she told me that
Okay, and then when you sent out thank you notes,
I sent them all out. I
And?
didn't. Well, a few people said, like Billy, how come I wasn't invited to that shower I sent your gift to? You know, and I said, you weren't invited because you were. And she said, I didn't get an invitation, Bonnie, and I did not send you a gift. And Miss Mack said the same thing, and that was after you and I moved there. I ran into her.
Miss McDaniel
Yeah.
from McDaniel's Furniture.
Because I went to church with her forever, and she said, Bonnie, that shower, I didn't get a gift. I didn't get an invitation to that or your wedding. I said, well, nobody hardly got an invitation to the wedding because we did it in 3 days. She said, but you had a long fancy dress and everything. I said, yeah, but I just had that dress. I said, you know. And she said, well, you sent me a note to thank me for, I think she sent 8 dinner plates of crystal. I had dinner plates and pie plates. And
Yeah.
Gwen sent 7 pie plates.
Did a ton of plates.
Yeah, and she said, Gwen said, I only sent you 7 because it's all they have. And so I don't know if Gwen bought that or if Ruth just put it on there, but Gwen came.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, I mean, I saw her every day, so of course she knows happening that, and she instigated that whole thing. But Ruth told me before we left that to go up there, that we were only staying 30 minutes, and that I was going in her car, and I had a car, because she didn't want me driving on the ice, and we'd been married for, it was Valentine's Day when we did it.
And you guys got married at Christmas.
Yeah, and she said, when I leave, you're leaving with me. Don't even think that you're going to get to stay for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up there, and when she said, she went in and announced that we would be leaving in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And Dina said, Bonnie, you're not leaving, are you? And I said, I guess, because I came with her. She said, I have to leave.
That was Dina Merrill.
She said, I have to leave. With
Did she
her."
talk to you much that night?
I was only there 30 minutes. Nobody talked to me much, but she just came. She said, I wanted to apologize for coming because, and they told me she was somebody else. They told me she was a friend of Miss Ballew's. And she said, I just had to be here for the evening, and so I just went and bought you a gift. I said, oh, you did not have to do that. You would have been absolutely welcome. And she gave me this set of pillowcases that said his and hers. It was embroidered. And I'm sure she came and bought that crystal, all of it, because she was the one that was there. And then one of the grandparents, either Cliff's dad or Grandmother Fortescue, bought the sterling. And Mamo came after the wedding. After the shower, about 2-3 days later, and she said, you must go pick out sterling. And I said, Mamo, I don't need any sterling. I said, I have silver plate. That's plenty good enough. And she said, well, Ruth's getting dressed and we're all going to go pick out that pattern. And I said, the shower is over. What's the point now? I argued with her. She just wouldn't have it any other way. And then that stuff came in like a month later, and Rusty and I were in for, Rusty was there, but I hadn't left yet. But anyway, she invited us all over for lunch at Ann's house, and Ann wasn't there. And she had this huge monster table set up, because I had 24 place settings, which is unheard of. When they asked me how many I wanted, I told them that. And Ruth said, why on earth do you want 24 place settings? And I said, have you ever counted the amount of people in your family? We always had Christmas together with that whole crowd. And she said, oh, I guess you have a point. But we left, and then...
That's why I have 2 forks.
Yeah. There's plenty of forks in the storage building. Just go get them, and I wish you would.
Anyway.
But anyway, she set that table up, and we went over there, and she invited Ruth and Tommy and Dee Dee and me and Rusty. And I guess Harold was there, but I don't remember him.
Momo did?
No, Gwen at Ann's house. She cooked up this little brunch, and I don't think there was any food ever. I think she just wanted to show off that silver that she had it. But
there was never food at Gwen's house.
No. But that was such a embellished, ornate design. You would not miss it, period. And they didn't have anything like that. Ann had nice stuff. But anyway, Ruth was just, smoke was coming out her ears and out her nose. She was boiling mad. And when we left going home, Rusty and I said, why did you give that to her? And he said, well, yes. He said, those gifts belong to me the same as they do you. I said, your family did not give me one thing, or you either. Not one single gift came from them except Gwen, those 7 pie plates. That's the only thing anybody, not Mama, not Jonesy, nobody. And none of his aunts and uncles and none of that garbage. And he said, well, you don't have any business with that, and you would know what to do with it anyway. And Ruth took your crystal, so she's taking your silver. And I said, Ruth's not taking my crystal. She's not going to let me have it until I get a place to put it. And I said, I will absolutely get it back. And he said, well. And Gwen told me that morning, she said, I'm taking 12 of these, a service for 12, and Ann's taking service for 12, and when we die, they'll go to our kids. And that was the end of it. I never saw it anymore. I never saw it on her table or anything. I saw her table set up one time, and I'm sure she wanted it. That's what they did, you know. So I don't know. And then I finally got that crystal when we were in that house in Omaha.
Yeah, I remember that.
About 2 years before the divorce. And Dee Dee came in, just said, your china. She had the china too, and I bought the china. She said, he said, your china and crystal are in the trunk of my car, and I don't care if it's broken. They didn't even wrap it. They just set it in there, and nothing was broken, thank God. But
Everything was a big ass fight.
yeah, always.
Yep.
That was a disgusting mess. But I kind of figured that out when we were there, that's what she was actually doing that from the comments, the prostitution thing, from the comments people were making to me. But and also Daryl was pretty vocal, and I think he was involved in that.
I'm sure he was in one way or another.
It was what?
I'm sure he was in one way or another.
I think he had.
He hung out at Cook's all the time, so.
He had a pretty good hand in that thing. Anyway, but he is also the first person that told me the Fortescue name, the Massey name, and the Bell name. That's the first instant. And he had a big book, and he was going through it, and he said, "Do you know these people?" And he started naming them all. And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Are you related to the Masseys here?" And the Masseys were in that. You remember that building that was an antique building across from Ruth on Prince Street that Tandy worked in?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a hospital that Dr. Massey and his wife manned. It
Yeah.
was like the Nichols Hospital in Plainview. They manned that one.
Yeah.
And she used to come in all the time in Williams, and I didn't know her very well, but she would come and just give me information. She and her husband had gone on a hiking trip, and they'd been gone like 2 weeks. And her mom sent out the search party. She got scared that something was wrong, and she came in there just boiling mad, talking about that can't go anywhere with your husband without getting really mad. Without the authorities coming in.
Call the
saying,
feds.
Okay, yeah.
That's funny.
So I come me to remember her. And we went to school with 2 different Bell families, and the boy in one and the girl in one of them got married. And I can't remember their names, but they both had the same name. I don't think it was Johnny, but the girl and the guy.
When
They got married.
when Zini came to Arkansas, when you were little, Zini and Alma were about the same age, right?
Elma was 2 years younger than Milsine.
So
Alma
she
was
didn't come.
12.
So she was still at home.
They were both still at home when I got there.
Okay.
And
But she didn't come to Arkansas ever?
Elma?
Yeah.
No. But Elma went to work at the Foxy, and they would, I've told you this before, they would rent bicycles, and they would, and I'd beg to go with them, and they'd tell me, sit right here on the curb, we'll come back and get you.
And then they never come back.
No, they never came back. But when I got raped there, Elma started taking me to clean houses with her. And I'd hold the dustpan, I remember.
Yeah.
But that neighbor kept me the first week, and then Elma would take me with her. And Melzine got married while we were there. She ran off and got married to that
Ray Tipton.
Ray Tipton, and they lived behind Miss Bryant's house. That's how she figured all that out. But she already knew about that, I think. I think that Josephine German didn't live very far from us. She lived in Cherry Hill in Arkansas. That's where she moved to keep from getting in a fight with Ruth's dad over her being a prostitute and Portales at that bordello.
Yeah.
And she...
Do you remember anybody in Arkansas? Because Ruth was married to Jim. He was like a fur trapper or something.
Yeah, he trapped mink.
Do you remember him when you were little?
I only saw him that one time when I got a picture. And when Lewis took me there.
You don't remember him in Arkansas when you were little at all?
He wasn't there.
Okay.
That was one thing that Ruth complained about, is he never showed up. And his mother kept us in milk and butter, and she had a
Do you remember his mother?
I only saw her one time. I only remember seeing her one time. I was thinking about this last night. She had a really fancy house. She had all mahogany furniture.
Was her name Birdie?
Birdie was her. That was her nickname. I don't know what her
Birdie
name really
Thornton.
was. But she, I don't know what she did, but she had enough money to live on. and her husband, she didn't have a husband there. I mean, he was dead, I guess.
You
She,
don't-
she had a bunch of kids.
You don't know what happened to him?
I didn't know anything about her really. But when Ruth was working and Zini were working at the bus station,
Yeah.
she was going to take Arnold to the carnival,
Mm-hmm.
but she was not going to take me. And she was keeping us. And so about dark, they left, and they left me there by myself. I was 2. And I was
Nobody else in the house?
just me. And she said, you just stay here. She said, I want you to go get in bed and go to sleep. And she said, I will bring you something. And Arnold said, I'll bring you a balloon. And I was crying. I was throwing a fit because I was real scared. And they left. And the next morning, Arnold's balloon was in the floor beside me. It was going down, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
he brought me a balloon. That's the only time I ever remember anything with her.
Anything about her?
And
Did she have a big house?
I just remember the bedroom, and it had all mahogany furniture because I thought that was the fanciest bed I'd ever seen.
Huh?
It was real.
So it was really nice.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was big. It might have been in that circle of houses, you know, that we went up there and found the dolls.
Yeah.
It could have been in that, but I don't know. The only thing I remember is that room because I was terrified.
Was that supposed to be Cherry Hill or Mina?
No, that was Mina, supposedly.
Mina.
Ruth said it was Mina, and I always wondered if it was really California.
Did you remember any other of his relatives?
Lori Lee was a daughter that was married to, we knew what Lee she was married to, remember?
I remember the name, but I can't remember.
Elma said, when they left that quilt that looked brand new, that was a baby quilt, and it matched my bedroom.
That's what started all the flashbacks, yeah.
She said, I said, Elma, where did you get this? Because Ruth just went through the roof when she saw that. She said, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think Elma left it over here because it matched this bedroom, I guess. Because she just kind of spread it out on the bed, and it was a little baby quilt.
Yeah.
She said, oh, she stole so much from me. She always fussed about that because Elma stole a bunch of pictures and stuff from her because her things were stored at Mom and Dad's house in 1016 Hinkle when we were there until we got a place to live.
Yeah.
Which is a few years. But Lori Lee and Tommy Lee, I used to play with him a lot. And so I guess I was over there.
Was Lori Lee your age then?
No,
Oh.
Lori was his mother.
Was his mother?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was still in California. She had that big warehouse. I called her one time.
Yeah.
She had that big warehouse that stored all of the celebrities' wives' gowns if they had worn once.
Yeah.
And people could go up there that were in that little loop and check something out if they wanted something to wear.
Yeah.
So, and she was over that. She owned it, I think. But the reason I remember her, oh, and Thelma. I remember Thelma because
Was Thelma
she was a sister. She was one of Jim's sisters.
Jim's sister?
Mhm.
Oh, they're the ones who came from California
Mhm.
to visit always.
Mhm.
Did they ever talk about him?
Jim,
Yeah.
when they came to the house on Ross Street when you and I saw him,
Yeah.
and I showed him the Indians.
I kind of vaguely remember that because I didn't really know who anybody was, but
He
I
said they had stopped at Ruth's and asked if they could come down and see me, and she said yeah, and she told them how to get there. And they came in, and he was telling me that I should not be upset about Jim because what Ruth said about him was right. And he said he just was a vagabond and he didn't take care of you guys and all this stuff. And I told him about that Franklin Thornton that was a lawyer there. He said, Bonnie, you need to go talk to him. He could tell you a lot of stuff, but you don't have enough information about your life.
yeah.
And
You never did that.
no, that office was never open. We were there a couple of times, and I'd go by there. It wouldn't be open. And I don't know if he'd have given me any information or not, but I can't remember that guy's name. But he had 2 brothers, and he had 2 sisters, I think. Or 3 brothers. So he had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I think there were 5 of them. And I wasn't around them very much.
Did they all live in Arkansas?
They live in California.
All of his siblings? Huh.
I think that, I think Bertie lived there too. I don't think she lived in Mena. Ruth always said she did, but I don't think so.
But that house, you don't know if it was in
I think
Mena
it was
then
in
or
California.
California?
I think it really was.
Huh.
But I just think that from comments. But what Elma said about that quilt was, she said, Bonnie, Grandma Lee made that for you. Don't you remember, Grandma?
Yeah, I remember that because I was in high school, and that's what started the whole flashback thing, I think, because I had said to you, it's so weird you don't have any memories before you were 12 years old.
Yeah.
And that's what started the whole thing. Yeah.
And you said, Rosie talks all the time about when he was a kid. You don't ever talk about anything.
Well, and I
beyond 12.
vividly remember things that happened when I was 2. Like, I
Yeah.
remember my bunny and playing in the sand.
I
And
do too now. But
pushing him up the
then.
slide, and
Yeah. But the Lees had to be in California because her Lori Lee husband, I talked to him. I can't remember his first name. You'd remember that if I could think of that. But when I worked for the $1 Million Club, I set up an appointment with him.
Yeah.
And he knew me when I was talking to him on the phone. That's probably why I had such luck selling that stuff. But anyway, he said, I'm having my house renovated right now. And he said, if you will give me 6 weeks, you can come out and we will discuss this. And I said, I'm coming out to your house? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. And he kept putting me off. He never let me do it. But that had to be Lori's husband.
Yeah.
And I think they had to be Asian, don't you? I know he was Asian. And he was, he is one of the people that was involved in the 4 people who financed Spider-Man. He was
Stan Lee.
Stan Lee, that's
Yeah.
who it is. And Cliff talked about him when I talked to him on the phone that night. He said, me and 3 of my buddies did that, and he told what they all did. He was an artist.
Was that when we were in California?
That's when he called me that night wanting a kidney. He asked me why I wouldn't do it, and I said, because I'm too healthy. He said, what's wrong with that? And I said, they glean people all
Was
the
it a
time.
kidney or a liver?
I don't know. He didn't tell me. It was just a body part. That's all he said. But he said, are you a donor on your driver's license? I said, no, I'm not. He said, well, you would do it. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, is Angela? And I said, no, she is not. And then when that guy kept showing up with the motorcycle and crap, I thought, that's another reason I wanted to get out of there. I was worried about that. But I told him, I said, they're in trouble all the time over here for taking everything out of people that are healthy. I said, I wouldn't have a prayer. And he said, you could always take, what he said was I could always take dialysis over the kidney. But he talked to me about 4 hours. He talked to me till I told him I had to go. And his voice cracked. It really upset him that I didn't do that, I think. But he didn't call me back.
And I can't remember when he died.
He died 3 years later.
3 years later. What do you think happened to Arnold?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean,
You mean, I don't think anything happened to him. You mean was he molested or anything?
well, yeah, I did wonder that when he was a kid.
She was very, very protective of him. Nothing ever happened to him. I can tell you that right off the bat. I'm sure it didn't.
You think he didn't die when they said he did?
I think there's a possibility he collected life insurance. I know Carolyn did. I saw her after that. And I knew for a fact that Heather didn't die, and you did too, when they told us she died. And she's here. You can look it up on my phone. She is absolutely here. She's in Durango. And it had a picture of her. And it's her. And she moved back in 22.
Where was Arnold before they said he died?
He was in Stevensville.
In Texas.
Where I don't go because I don't like them. We don't stay there because
They,
they don't
need-
like cats.
they don't like cats.
They don't like
They let
horses.
horses stay in the hotels. They don't let cats stay in the hotels.
They told us absolutely.
And that's the
right.
one place we saw pro-Biden hay baled. We don't go to Stevensville.
I told them that night, I said, you have horse poop all over this parking lot and you won't let my cat stay here?
I know. We don't even go there anymore.
I told Arnold about that. He started laughing. He said, you gotta come here and sell something. He said, there's boutiques all over the place. I said, yeah, well, I don't go to Stevensville. He said, why? And I told him. He started laughing.
Not nice to kitties. Not even kitty people.
The kitties can't stay there. I'm like, oh, here.
Our kitties stuck for Trump anyway, right? Yeah.
He was real sick and he couldn't afford the medicine, so I would think the next thing he would do is check cash in his life insurance. That's what they did with Carol and that other one.
You think he's still in Stevensville?
I have no idea. I try to avoid those people as much as I can. I have no interest or reason to ever darken their door again, period.
You think he'll just resurface?
No. I don't think he will. I think they'd be nuts to do that. I think they might get caught. I told Sue that. Sue Funk. She said, you think he did that? And I said, no, I know his wife did it. I saw her after that. She just stopped in her tracks when she saw me, and she had one of those little dogs just like Ruth has, just like the has.
The corgis?
She was leaving it out of the beauty shop, and she was, they'd done her makeup and everything, I'm sure. And she just went like that, and I did too.
She saw a ghost.
Yeah.
Did she say anything?
And I just kept going. I thought, well, there's no point in even acknowledging that. Arnold was asking me about taking medicine for heart, and I said I never did it. I said I have not had a prescription filled for me or Angela, either one, since that happened to Tim.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you haven't? And I said, no. I said, they give me a prescription. I take it home, tell Angie what they said, and she looks it up online and go to the health food store and get it.
Yep.
And I said, I don't know if that would even work for you, because I said, I think if you're not on that diet, it might not work. But I said, the health food store probably could tell you. But I said, I don't know what it was. I said, Angie ordered it. I have no idea. I never heard from him again. And then he had that funeral, and they didn't do a obituary like they didn't for Carolyn. And I called Chalk and I said, you tell those kids to somebody to sit down and write an obituary for him and put it out there so people know what happened to him. And so just right away, Missy did it, and it was like 10 pages. She didn't know what an obituary was. She told all kinds of stuff about him.
Did we ever hear if Jeanette died?
I wondered about her today. It's funny that you should bring that up. I thought I'm going to look that up.
I don't remember ever hearing.
I didn't. Her head was split open, I know that. And she and Arnold were going to get back together, he said. And then about 2 weeks later, that was over. But I said, are you happy about that? He said, oh, yeah.
What do you think happened with Leonard?
He moved to Mexico.
What was the deal with he was married to somebody with your name?
Bonnie Freeman was her name.
Yeah.
She was, you know how it used to say he always worked 7 days a week?
Mm-hmm. Oh.
He didn't work 7 days a week. Nobody ever saw his paycheck either.
What was Chalk's famous quote? My wife's married, but I'm not.
Yeah. He had 2 kids that I know of by other women.
Chalk did.
Mm-hmm. I think that's where Rusty got the idea. Oh, well, that'd be a good thing to do.
Were they the same other women, or
No.
Jody and?
Jody was one of them, and he always was in that kid's life. And the other one was from Bovina. She came in the barn.
She was a girl.
Oh, his girlfriend when she was pregnant.
Okay.
I don't know what the kid was. Jody's was boy.
A son, yeah.
And those kids knew each other. They all had.
Yeah, they were friends.
Yeah, they were friends. But
You think Freddie knew it?
yeah, Freddie knew it. I asked her. I said, "Oh man, if Freddie knew all of the stuff about him, she would go threaten to beat people up." And she'd tear into him. He was a sleazepot. Rusty kind of wanted that kind of conflict.
Yeah.
You know, he used to try to get me to do stuff like that. I said, "You're crazy. I'm not going to lower myself to their level." But
I remember Jeanette used to say she loved a big old hairy fight. So
yeah.
Some people do.
Arnold, she said that's what she didn't like about Arnold. He wouldn't fight with her. We didn't either one fight with our spouses because there was too much bickering in that family we grew up in. It was a mess.
Arnold was married to Jeanette and Carolyn and Karen. He was married 3 times.
Mm-hmm. And he was real mad at me because I didn't bring Ruth to his wedding, and we were on the way, and she would not go.
Leonard was supposed to die, I guess, when I was little, huh?
He didn't, though. One time this is the reason I know he didn't die, was we were there, and I said something about when Leonard's funeral was, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and Joe looked around and said, "Granddad's not dead." And y'all were in high school, or I'm sure, because I didn't hardly see her after that.
I never saw her either. And then we saw him. I didn't know him, but you saw him in a car.
That was a session. That was outside.
No, that was when we left a hotel in Amarillo after we came back from California.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know when he died. I know that if you look it up, it says he died when.
Because we were pulling
They
out of
had
that
that
hotel and you saw somebody in a car and you said, "That's Leonard."
Yeah. There was something going on that
It was after
he was
2000.
mad at Dee Dee and Tommy or something that they were doing.
It was like after 2008, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I do remember that. He was real. He always looked the
It
same.
was that year the heat melted the Scrabble in the back of our car. Remember that? The Scrabble game was melted in a puddle. It was so hot.
I tell you what, it's a miracle we survived all that. I'm not kidding.
How long were Leonard and Ruth married?
They got married when I was 7, and they got divorced when I was pregnant with you. That was 1970, and
It's like 21
I was
years.
28.
21
So,
years.
when you were born, yeah. They were married a long time. He called me. They're just having a fit.
So Ruth basically waited tables a couple of years and went through Ray Pemberton and Buck and Alcee Lee.
No, Alcee Lee was
Oh, he was
a
later.
lot later.
But anyway.
She was back then. She was a madam at Cook's when she was
So
born
she
out,
was waiting tables in Trickin for a few years till she found a steady paycheck with a railroader.
Mhm.
Stuck with it 20 years to get the retirement check. He bought her a house.
No, he didn't. My grandfather bought both those houses.
Well, anyway, she had a house finally, because before that she was just room to room and yeah.
She had that house in South Lee before she married him, about a year, because she rented that out to Jack and Grace when Jackie was a little boy. And
That was before she married?
yeah, and she lived in one of the bedrooms. Now Arnold lived there too. Around when I lived at Miss Bryant's, he didn't live there. He wasn't there at night.
So she owned the house on South Lee at that time?
Mm-hmm. And he came and totally had it redecorated when they went on their honeymoon. Miss Mary came and redecorated it, which pissed her off to no good end, and she dumped the whole mess. But and then after that rape, right after that rape, he bought that house on Ross Street so I would have a bedroom.
That also happened at your 12th birthday party, right?
10th.
10th. The gang rape.
That's when Arnold pulled that stunt, and she sent all the kids home, and they all had a big banister birthday with a fancy big cake. That she told them not to bring gifts, so there weren't any gifts. So she sent all the kids home. They told me that the next day.
And then you were gang raped
No, I was raped by Arnold that day.
that day.
She had all of us go out to the sand bed. They had a sand bed that was railroad ties and sand in it, and the rock fence behind it.
And this was on South Lee?
Mm-hmm. And she told us to go, and my grandmother had me go to the beauty shop and get my hair cut and permed.
Mm-hmm.
And they cut it in a poodle. I was so happy because I wanted my hair in a poodle. And of course, I never went to the beauty shop. And she sent her money to buy me a nice dress. And she went and got some red fabric that was red and white. And she made me a real cute dress. And I was so proud of that.
Ruth did?
Mm-hmm. And she kept the rest of the money for herself. Of course, she didn't buy a dress. She went and bought the cheapest thing she could get, but it was cute. But anyway, she told us to go to the sand bed and I'll stand up and get a picture made. Because she had to send a picture too.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to get a picture of the cake. And when I went running back through the house, because there were kids everywhere. We had 50 kids there. There were kids in the front, kids in the back, kids in the house. And I was going out the front door, and Arnold said, "Oh, the birthday girl, I've got a special present for you. Come around here, I'm going to show you." And he took me around to the side of the house, on the left side, the south side, where Cena Hare had turned them in before.
Mm-hmm.
And it slammed me on the ground, and I was saying, "Oh, please don't mess up my hair and my pretty dress," and just begging him not to do that. And I looked this way and saw Ruth gathering the kids to the other side of the yard. And he raped me and I passed out. I always passed out. I didn't know anything after that until the next morning when they got me up to go to school. And I said, "Can I get a piece of cake?" And she said, "The cake is gone," in that voice, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're not going to get anything. You get up and get ready to go to school. And when I got to the school bus, this girl that I went to school with said, "Bonnie, what happened to you yesterday?" And I said, "They said I got sick." And she said, "Yeah, they said you passed out." And I said, "I do that."
You passed out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Protho was the doctor.
Yeah.
And he was always around. Like they called him anytime you got sick from Bryant's on.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's because he was the only pediatrician that had ever been in Clovis. That was a big deal to
Yeah.
get to go to him. And
And you
those-
fainted all the time.
Yeah, and those bills all went to Cliff's dad, I'm sure.
And he had to know.
Well, he did, but you remember I called him? Jay came over there in Stillwater
Mm-hmm.
and said, "Have you ever talked to Dr. Protho?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "No, why would I talk to Dr. Protho?" She said, "I just wondered if you ever talked to him." And after she left, I thought, there's something. That was when the flashbacks
Mhm.
were going on. I thought, he
Yeah.
knows something. And I called him and asked him, I said, "Dr. Protho," I told him who I was, and I said, was I ever raped? And he's, "No, Bonnie, of course not." And the only time that he ever gave me an examination like that, because I was a kid, I mean, he wasn't supposed to even have me in there after I was 18, I think. I was here till I was 21. But he, when Ruth pulled that stunt with Everett Widener, she went up there and told him to give me a test, and she wanted to know if I'd been messing around. And he did.
Where did he live? Did he live
Dr. Protho lived in one of those houses
by Miss Bryant's? Yeah.
across the alley.
Who lived? Okay, so tell me who
That's
lived.
where his office was. across.
Tell me who lived in the houses around Bryant's.
Cora Hartley and her kids, and her husband,
Yeah.
Earl Hartley.
Vora Hartley.
Laura.
And she was married to Earl
Earl
Hartley.
Yeah, and she was like 20 years older than him.
What I find ironic about that is that she's the one who, I mean, I know she was the big church going rich lady in
I
town.
don't think she was involved in any of that.
Well, I don't know her, I mean, I know who she is, but what I've always found suspicious about that is her involvement with all of the battered women's bullshit in Clovis, and
Just because she donated money to everything like that.
yeah,
She had a truckload.
it was either a clever cover or
It might have been.
yeah.
She was really.
So who else lived around there?
Really active in that church. The preacher,
Mm-hmm.
who had 5 boys.
Yeah.
And he was the preacher, and I can't remember his name.
Of what church? The First Baptist Church?
Yeah. And we didn't go there at that time. But there were 4 or 5 little houses over there, and they turned them into offices when
Mhm.
they moved in there as young families, which is when I was at Miss Bryant's. And then as they could buy a house up on the hill,
Mm-hmm.
they up top that hill, they turned those into offices. So they were always.
But while you were there was
they
the
lived there.
Hartleys, the Baptist
Hartley's,
preacher,
Protos,
Dr.
Baptist
Proto,
and I guess Mr. Gore must have been there because his office was there.
and he was a
later.
lawyer.
Yeah.
And were there other lawyers on that street? You said.
I think there were only 4 houses on that street. There might have been 5. I used to know every house and who was in them.
Yeah.
And I know those 3 for sure were in them. And I think Mr. Gore had to be there because his office was there too.
I think that incident when you had pink eye, supposedly, when they told you had pink eye after you'd been assaulted, I think when they put you on the porch with the red sunglasses, I think that was a calling card to let everybody
It was,
know.
that was real. I couldn't even walk then.
Yeah, I know, but I think it was Miss Bryant's way of telling the world she had a new girl in the
Oh,
house.
could be. I'll tell you somebody else that was there. She ran off and got married when she was 12, and I don't know how long she was there, but her name was, and you know her daughter, her name was May Turntime. And she came to the house once, and both those little girls, they were 3 years old, and they were twins, and she worked for Jackman's. The twins.
Oh, they were older than me, but I knew who she was.
Yeah, but they were-
yeah.
Yeah, they were almost.
I don't know her
age.
name now, but I knew her at the
But
time.
May worked for Jameson's grocery store
Yeah.
with Freddie, and I went there one day, and she was sitting down, stooped down, putting cans in the bottom shelf. And I said, "Hi, May, how are you?" And she said, "Oh, I'm fine. Oh, I wanted to ask you something." And I went over there. She said, "Were you ever mistreated at Miss Bryant's house?" And I said, "No." She was, I was brainwashed, you know.
Yeah.
I told her what Ruth told me to say. I said, "She probably saved our lives," because she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because boy, that isn't what happened with me."
Yeah.
And then she had those twin girls. She got married when she was 12.
Yeah.
That's how she got out of there. And her husband was, I think, a distributor of Coca-Cola or something. He had some kind of job like that, or Dr. Pepper or something.
And they stayed in Clovis.
They were still there when,
Yeah.
And that girl married Steve Wilmoth, and his dad was a trucker
Yeah.
for the barn. I mean, not for the barn, but
Yeah.
he all cattle. And he had several trucks.
Yeah.
He and the Steels.
Yeah.
I think that was 4 houses behind her. I was trying to think, because Janie Netzel lived, and she went to the First Baptist Church. Her and her mother lived on the first house. Yeah, there had to be 4 houses, because Thelma Rector, the one I told you about the other day that was married to Gene Eccles,
Mm-hmm.
her and her 3 sisters lived on the corner. Miss Bryant lived next, and then the 2 boys lived at the next one. I don't know their names. And then Janie Netzel and her mother lived in that other one, because I went there to a yarn thing one time. They were carrying
Yeah.
the yarn that we didn't ever get in Clovis, so they were given knitting lessons. And then the other part of it was businesses.
That was just strictly a trafficking ring.
Yeah.
They had a doctor, a lawyer, the church, it was
It
just
could've
totally
been.
a cover.
I never picked up on that, but yeah, it could have been.
All in one little spot.
And right across from the courthouse, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we came in, I've told you this before, I think, but we came in, we used to go to the movies once a week,
Mm-hmm.
walk to the movies and walk back with Miss Bryant at night. And we came back and we got to the corner of Connolly and 7th Street, and she went flying around that corner running, and she always wore heels about
Who?
this high.
Miss
Miss
Bryant?
Bryant. that were chunky, that those chunky old
Yeah.
lady shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And she went just running for her life, and Arnold and Johnny Carroll did too, because she was screaming, "Oh, it's a raid! It's a raid! They've raided us! They've raided us! It's a raid!" And that porch was loaded with the fanciest liquor bottles you have ever seen.
Yep.
And
that's what was in the newspaper. Every time we found a newspaper article about
yeah.
them, they were raided.
well, because
Yeah.
I imagine the cops were having a party.
I'm sure. We lived in downtown LA.
That cellar, the thing she learned, that cellar was full of that. That's what that cellar had in it, because she cooked fresh food all the time.
Yeah.
She would start the vegetables as soon as we would get the breakfast dishes.
The
done.
cellar was the business.
Mm-hmm. And then Melzine
Mm-hmm.
lived back there with Ray. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that was trafficking.
Yeah.
And up in the front bedroom that opened to the porch
Yeah.
was where that lady lived at the time. And Arnold told me one time when we were kids, we were in the floor playing, and he said, "That bedroom is yours." I said, I sleep in the bed with you, because I didn't know he left.
Mm-hmm.
"No, that bedroom is yours." And so I said, "It is, huh?" So I went in there and sat down on the bed, and Miss Bryant came in there just,
Lost it.
"Oh yeah." She said, "You don't come in here until you're told to come in here." And they kept that totally off and all fancied up. It was real. Her house was nice. She had a lot of nice stuff in it.
Yeah.